Now, back to your tech report.
We're back on your Tech Report. Thank you guys so much for being with us each and every single week. I need to change that lineup, Mitchell. Please follow along on all our social media. It is at Your Tech Report, where you're going to want to go right now, because we're going to post a link to a very exciting Kickstarter campaign that Mitchell's about to tell you more about, and our guest is standing by.
You know what? We love being able to talk about things, that are interesting to everyone, of course. And of course, we also especially love things that are interesting to everyone, but also special to us, Mark. So, we've talked about board gaming on this channel a lot, especially the tech aspects. I try and mix in, the tech aspects for things that are really selfish that I want to talk about because I love board games, right?
You said it.
But, I know. But we also, board gaming is a fairly analog hobby, but there is a digital/tech aspect to it. So we had on a while ago, who has since become a friend of the show, Noah Adelman. He is the man behind Game Trayz. Now, Game Trayz is a company that over the years has, when you buy one of the hobbyist board games that you'll fund on Kickstarter, and they have these incredible inserts where everything is organized perfectly in these vacuum-formed plastic shells that, so that you can organize your game quickly, get it to the table quickly, pack it back up in the box. And so Game Trayz earned a fantastic reputation for making gaming look better, run better to the table, make you play your games more often. And Noah came on the show with us and talked about, because he's an engineer by trade, and he created this company based on his engineering skills, being able to suss out exactly how these pieces fit in. So he talked to us about the tech behind that. But guess what, Mark? Game Trayz did not stop. Game Trayz didn't stop at making cool stuff for existing games. Game Trayz is now publishing a game of its own. For the first time, Game Trayz Labs, which is part of Game Trayz, is now coming out with their own game on Kickstarter. And here to tell us more, the man, the myth, well, actually the man behind Game Trayz and everything Game Trayz Labs, he is Noah Adelman. Noah, welcome back to the show, man. How are you?
I am awesome. Thanks, Mitch.
How was that for an
Thanks,
unscripted
Mark.
intro? Because we have nothing written down here.
No, it was great.
That was from the heart. And
I was expecting some sort of entry music after you ended.
We had that afterwards. Don't worry about that. We're going to add that.
Don't push it. He's expecting way too much production value for that introduction.
You need to be on at least, 17 times before you get your own music.
Intro.
You have to compose it. It's a whole legality. No, I got to ask you. I got to ask you a question. How long has this been in the making for you? Because I know this is not a very quick process. So this is obviously has been leading up to this point for a while.
Yeah. So the game is Forsaken, and we started on this about 2.5 years ago. At this point, it was an idea that I've always wanted to do and work on, and since I have I have friends with a lot of industry designers and developers of board games. I always wanted to work with them to get my own game under the Game Trayz name. So 2.5 years ago, I hooked up with Travis Chance, who is a board game designer in the industry, and let's make this game. And then COVID happened, so now it's 2.5 years later. The normal process could take 2.5 years, but COVID definitely pushed things back.
Was it a hard sell on Travis, or was it something that you just came to him and he's like, oh, of course, man?
Yeah, I mean, well, pretty much I asked every one of my designer friends, like, do you want to do a game? Do you want to do a game? And then Travis was the first one to say yes. So, yeah, it was great.
You know what I wanted to bring up, and this is something, I know you said that part of it was probably because of COVID, but there's a good chance that even without COVID, that the development period could take 2.5 years. You don't know. So I think it's important that you bring that up, because I think to the uninitiated, to people that don't know how Kickstarter really works, it's a crowdfunding platform, but most people don't go there with just an idea, say, hey, here's the idea, let's just fund it. I mean, there is so much groundwork that goes before putting it on Kickstarter. The game has to be developed. There has to be a game there to sell with mechanics, with figures. So, you talk about just the development process. That includes production, of a working prototype of the game, which could take a long time to physically create. So people need to know that it really does. There's a lot of work that goes into making something before it ever appears on the radar of Kickstarter, right?
Correct. So that it definitely has become a lot different than it used to be, where you could just say, hey, I have an idea for a game. Do you want to help me figure out how to do that? And you could get money that way. But now there's so many board games that go on Kickstarter that, and not just Kickstarter, other crowdfunding sites are out there as well. But you have to basically prove that your game is the one that they should back at any given point. So you don't have an actual game? So
was it always a plan to go on Kickstarter, or was it just you wanted to gauge the interest before you actually?
Well, 2.5 years ago, Kickstarter was pretty much your only option.
Yeah.
There was GoFundMe, but it wasn't really used for this type of thing.
Well, I mean, I guess
But
you could always
then
do like a poll, just poll the audience. Do you want this game? But I guess crowdfunding helps people, put your money where your
Hold
mouth
your
is,
money,
right?
man.
Yeah.
Hold your money.
Got to get the money. So yeah, but since then there's been two other crowdsourcing websites specifically for board games because it's such a big part of Kickstarter that it kind of blossomed out into other companies doing it. So there's a company called GameFound, and there's BackerKit, another company that just launched their crowdsourcing or crowdfunding platform for specifically mostly for gaming stuff.
Well, and that actually is exciting in itself for the industry because it shows you the growth in which it is going through right now, which is a fun opportunity, I think, for not only you but other people who are developing and creating these games.
Yeah, so when we launched our game last Tuesday, there was at least 10 other games that launched that same day.
That's
Every
crazy.
Tuesday, I mean, it's not always on Tuesday, but most people launch on Tuesday for some reason. And every Tuesday is going to be another dozen, depending on the time of year, 24 games can launch on the same day.
Well, I mean, this really has turned into the movie industry, Noah, where, you executives sit around and try and plan, okay, well, we don't want to go up against this movie because we know
Yes.
that's coming out. But the thing is, because there are so many games that are funded up through Kickstarter, you don't necessarily know what you're going up against. So, I mean, you might have some idea because you better than most because
Yes.
you know the pulse of the industry and you actually do work for a lot of the companies that are probably putting out Kickstarters to compete against your very own. So
There is one that launched the day after mine that I am doing Trayz for their game.
talk about cannibalizing your own Kickstarter. But I want to also talk. I want to use this as a way to sort of get into the game itself. The game is Forsaken. I hear a lot of people, and I've been watching a lot of videos, and the industry is very excited about this. I mean, you watch Rahdo, you watch Quackalope, you watch a lot of the big board game folks on YouTube and in the industry. They're really excited about this game. If I had to use two words really quickly, I'd say space western, but it's so much more than that. Can you talk a little bit about the game? I know it's an open world game, which I love sandbox games. Those are great. So talk a little bit about the game itself.
Yeah, you basically said the three key words: sandbox, space western is really what it is, where you take on a persona or a role. You take on a role of someone who's coming to a desolate planet that's been stripped of all of its resources, and the Imperiad, who came there with all their huge equipment and stripped the place, basically just up and left one day and left basically scavengers and people there on their own without the proper, I guess, way to get off that planet because it's a distant planet. So there's basically people that left on this planet and they are the Forsaken. So you're trying to maintain or trying to make glory for yourself in this new open Western world in space. And you
can
that.
play different characters, right? And there are different experiences
Exactly.
you can have as you sort of explore your character's story, because there are individual storylines, and it's a branching story, so you don't really know how the game, which is one of the things I got excited about. It's more, I mean, I know you, so I was excited for you, but excited about the game itself, knowing that there are these different characters with branching storylines, and you're not really sure where that storyline is going to take you throughout the game, which, for a gamer for someone that loves video games and to be able to have similar experiences at the table, but with people socially, that's the part I think that's super exciting for me.
Yeah, I really wanted to take the story aspect of a game to a different direction that a lot of story games are out there. So it is a one-time play game. It's not a one-time play. I mean, every time you play the game, it's different, but it's not a continuous story that you have to go through several campaigns or several versions of the game to get to a certain ending. But every time you play, the story will be different based on the characters you play with. There's going to be over 10 characters that you can play as, and each one of those has their own storyline that you can branch through in different ways during the game, in different sessions that can go different ways, but also you're interacting with the planet itself. So the planets, one planet and the two moons, have their own story decks. And depending on which cards you come across as you're exploring this land, it will change the decks of other planets or other moons
That's cool.
during that game. So if you come across someone that asks for help finding their lost kitten or something like that, a space kitten,
Your little space
then
kitten,
you'll
they're
say,
dangerous,
yes,
yeah.
I want to help you, or no, go hit the road.
And that
So,
decision has repercussions later on in the game.
exactly. You might
I love
actually
it.
shuffle in a card on another planet, and then someone may find the kitten that wasn't there before.
And the
Or
kitten grows up and kills you for not saving it. So there you
exactly,
go.
it turns out to be a giant tiger. It wasn't actually a kitten, and you have to fight it now.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah, so
That's
each
really cool.
character has their own story, but they all intertwine with the planet stories, and there's specific cards, which I think is one of the cool aspects, new things that we're doing is you may come across an encounter on one of the moons or planet that says, read your story encounter from the book. So if you're playing
wow.
as this character, Pierce, or this character, Soul, you will read a different encounter on that planet, and it will be different and specific to the story that that character has already going on.
That's really important because, again, you're talking about replayability, and of course, because there's so many branching stories, but the idea that you could come across something as a different character in a different gameplay
Right.
session and say, oh, I know what's going to happen. And no, you don't, because this is different characters, different playthrough. You're finding it at a different
Exactly.
point of the game and being able
Plus,
to
there's
yeah.
three factions
Oh my
that live
gosh.
on the planets that are kind of like they're, little gangs, three gangs that have kind of made a name for themselves, and you can do jobs for them if you want.
Oh,
You get
wow.
reputation with them by doing different things. And there's also that also could change the events on different planets. So let's say you come across another person that's offering you to buy something, and it'll say, do you have reputation with the sanctioned faction already? If you do, this guy is a sanctioned supporter, and he'll give you something. If you're not, he may just have you buy something. But if you have reputation in a rival faction, he may start fighting you all of a sudden. So there's a lot of different things that could change the same card that would come up in multiple plays.
You know what? I hear you explaining the game. I hear you talking about it. And I've always talked about not the symbiotic relationship, but sort of like the crossover there is between video gaming and board gaming. And this kind of game to me, Forsaken in particular, on Kickstarter right now, we suggest you going back it immediately. Shameless plug. It has the vibe of a video game to me when I think about it, and when I explain it and talk about it with other people. And I think I'm always looking for a way. And Mark, I've been trying to do this with Mark as well, but it's hard because we live on not only different countries, different parts of the continent in general. I'm always trying to think of new ways to bring more people into the hobby. And I know that video gamers in general are open to board games because it's a different style of gaming, and it's in person, and there's that visceral human contact and response. But I really think the more people that hear about this, especially video gamers, that want to make sure that their experience, what they're used to, the depth of experience that you're used to, and that a digital experience gives you, translates really well to the table. And I think this game is sort of a perfect example of that. It's the perfect storm. So you hear that, video gamers?
Thanks.
If you think board gaming isn't for you, you're wrong. Go back Forsaken now. Before you jump in, Noah, there's something I wanted to say. And I think Mark, if he didn't already have this in mind, I might beat him to it. I don't know. So here you are. We have talked off the air. We've talked about your business. You've been kind enough to sort of give me some insight into how Game Trayz works, both on the show and off, which I'm appreciative of. And as a gamer, I learn a lot. And one of the things that is interesting to me, so as the man behind Game Trayz, you design this great insert. You put it together, by the specs that the publisher gives you. But at the end of the day, you're beholden to the specs that they give you, okay?
Correct.
They say, we're going to put 20 miniatures in. Please, Noah, find a great way to make a tray for it so we can fit it in this box. And you do your job, and you do your job perfectly, and then you send it off to the publisher. And then they get the game. They say, you know what? We love this. I'm going to try and squeeze one more thing. Thanks, Noah, so much. We got it from here. They try and squeeze one more thing. It throws off. You're like, wait a minute. That's not what I designed. So Here you are in situations where once you send your babies off, now it's up to the publishers to sort of like leave it alone, put it out there into the world as you designed it. And if they don't, at the end of the day, people come back and say, hey, Game Trayz, what's the matter? That one figure, that extra figure didn't fit. And you're like, it's not my fault. They added it afterwards. I had no control. So here we are. Fast forward to 2022. You're putting out your own game. You're in complete control of this. More pressure. Do you enjoy the autonomy of that? Because now, pressure or not, it's on you. So I was thinking about that. It must be nice to not worry about having to send it off and say, well, hey, whatever happens, happens. Now you finally get full control of everything. Good thing. It's sort of put pressure on you, or a little bit of both.
A little bit of both for sure. It's definitely there is the almost anonymity of being a part of all these games that I've been a part of, that I know that the trays are going to be good when I make them, because that's what I do best and that's what I do all the time, and I love doing it. So even if there is a small problem with the tray that happens, like you were explaining, if something changes in production, they didn't tell me, it's still going to be pretty good and way better than most
Oh, of course. Yeah.
inserts. So it's more nerve-wracking now because I have to make sure the game is good as well, which is a lot harder to do. And it's something that I don't know how to do as much as I know how to make trays. Like I can make perfect trays all day, but it's hard to make a perfect game for sure. And so it's a lot more pressure, a lot more riding on it as far as, reputation and things like that. But it's came together really awesome, and people are loving it. The trays are awesome, which I haven't even talked about the trays in this game yet.
Well, would you like to talk? This is your time. Tell us about the trays that are in. Wouldn't it be funny if it was like the lamest design yet? Yeah, I made some cardboard and stuck it together. We don't really care about the trays in this one.
Well,
Somehow I don't think that's what happened.
The central point is this dice tower. So it's not just your normal dice tower. It has a tray at the bottom, and the tray
by the way,
has multiple
just so you
tiers.
know, I'm going to stop you real quick. There's some people that don't know what a dice tower is.
Sure, go ahead.
So a dice tower they're really cool devices actually. If you have a game that involves dice rolling, especially more than two, if you're rolling several dice, it's a contraption that you put the dice into the top, you feed it in, and the dice bounce throughout this little tower, and then they come out and they shoot out the bottom. And basically, it's like it's a rolling tower. The tower rolls the dice for you and then spits them out in front of you. But this is, I think, a little more suave and sophisticated, more sophisticated than the way I just explained it, right?
That was a pretty good explanation, but that just describes the part where you put the dice in, and the part that's different from my tray is it has a landing zone that has 4 different tiers. So the dice, not only are you counting the roll of the dice and where they land, but also the tier that they land on will affect the value of that.
Oh, that's
those
really
dice.
cool.
So I know you guys are on audio mostly, but I'll do a little demo of the dice tray here.
Oh, wow. If you're on YouTube, you'll see exactly
Yes.
what he's doing right now, by the way. But go ahead, yeah.
So here, I'll just pull this up. You can see that there's multiple tiers to this tray. And you were going to count
levels,
the value of the level plus the value of the dice. So
that's cool.
When you're battling against someone, you're going to count up all of your dice, all the white dice, and then the person you're battling against or the monster you're trying to defeat will roll his blue dice. And if your total's higher than them, you've successfully defeated that roll. But there's also cool gear cards that allow you to manipulate the dice on the tiers that they land on. So you can make someone re-roll one of their dice that lands in the super high 5-point hit and have them re-roll it before, keep things in there and re-roll that one dice, and now it's up top where it's not worth as much. So
that's very clever. I've never
there's
seen
a lot of
anything
cool things like that.
See, this is the beauty of having an engineer that, as part of the game creation process, because you come up with really cool stuff, physical stuff and mental stuff. Yeah.
And Travis Chance and Mike Mihalsik are the 2 designers of the game, right? So I basically told them 2.5 years ago, I want to do this tray, this dice tower idea, right? That was my input. Make a game around this tower, and this was my input. And they're like, okay, this is what they came up with, basically. So
you know what though? It's not that strange. I mean, Hollywood does the same thing. It's like, we have this really cool thing. Let's create a movie around that one concept. It's like, really? Like, yep. And that happens all the time.
Yeah,
so,
Rados, speaking of movies, Rados was saying that it reminded him of playing, if you were like in The Mandalorian, this is like playing The Mandalorian game. As far as
I love that,
the adventures that you go on and stuff.
That's fantastic. Now, Mark, you've been quiet for way too long, and I know Mark is giving me all the room because he knows how excited I am about this. So I know he's being a good.
Well, I know what a dice tower is, Mark.
I do now.
Did you know?
I do now. Now, obviously, depending when people are listening to this, there's still a couple days to go, still some days to go, and some more money to be raised. You've surpassed your goal, so you're going into production with this. Now, your delivery on the final product is end of next year, right? So I'm curious,
Correct.
what is now that you've gone through the process of designing it, prototyping it, and what's the next steps for you? Like, what are you doing over the next year other than just making this?
Yeah, so the game, you can't complete the game 100% before you kickstart, because one of the main things that people like about Kickstarter who back things on Kickstarter is the idea that they're going to be able to make the game better by helping us fund at higher levels. So if we get by the end to another stretch goal, another value of our funding, we can then we have extra money because the price per unit will go down for us, and we can now add a special color dice or something like that that will add value to the game, production value to the game, or thicker cards, or thicker cardboard, or things that make the game better that they don't have to pay extra for because we're going to be able to add new, better things to the game just by getting that cost per game down with higher print runs, right? Just like most things. So it really makes the backers part of the game itself, thinking, that they are helping us make the game better by funding it. But after the Kickstarter ends, is finishing the game, right? So it is a lot of the way done, but there still is things that come up during the Kickstarter too, like with questions. We've got over 500 individual comments currently on the Kickstarter campaign. We answer every question that comes up, and sometimes they bring up points that we want to make changes to the game about.
I was just going to ask you
cool.
that.
Yeah, like they noticed something and that we didn't notice. Obviously, when you have this many more eyes on it than just the three of us over the last 2 years, you're going to find a lot of things that you might want to add to make the game better just by helping the crowd. So we finished the game, and that our goal for that is early next year, so January, February, and then we'll get production samples. Then once those are approved, we'll start production, and then by the end of next year, they should be being delivered to the fulfillment partners, which will then send them all the games individually off to all the backers.
What I love about these campaigns is that the various levels. This is not like some of the products we've seen in some of the early days of Kickstarter, where you're spending, literally hundreds, if not even more, dollars. Like, I mean, to get with the highest level at of what you've listed here, and of course you can go any more. You're talking about $194, listed here, and you get involvement in creating something. That's pretty cool, because it's rare that you get other types of products where you can actually be involved in the development. I think that really does set it apart.
It's scary too. Like, imagine if you had people making, and there are electronics that get funded this way, but it's hard. It's an interesting feeling to have everyone know how much money you're making on a product.
Yeah.
But because they don't know the cost. There's a lot of this is cost. So you're basically trusting them, and it's an open world, and just like my board game is an open.
Exactly. I was going to say that was a very good callback.
But it's a trust thing, and it's a very unique and very interesting for sure.
Well, you know what? In all fairness, and Mark sort of touched on this, there are some companies, especially now the Kickstarter or the crowdfunding has become so immensely popular and a great option for getting things out to market. Once, people start sort of, there's some companies that use it as a fulfillment center. Instead of a creative center, they use it as a way to fulfill or to gauge how many units they're going to sell. Yes, a pre-order, a better way. Thank you, Noah. A way to pre-order. They already made the product. They want to know how many people are actually going to spend the money on it. But that's not really what Kickstarter was designed to be. Mm-hmm. And I think the board game, although there are some board games that do similar things, but for the most part, the board game industry knows, that people love this collaborative aspect of the process. They like being able to make a comment and see you guys not just respond, but respond by making an adjustment or saying, you know what, you're right, we didn't think of that, we're going to put that in. And that's empowering to people. And I think that's why people sort of flock to this platform. And that's what makes it so hard to wait, because intellectually going in, okay, my game could take a year, or, with the shipping issues, there are things that are out of our control that could add a few months to it. So you're not quite exactly sure of the exact day you're getting it. So that's, you get I really want this now, but that is really offset by the fact that you're excited to be a part of the process. And I think that's why, Kickstarter is so successful. Okay. So.
And we're also not going to shut up after the campaign's over. We're going to continually talk to the backers for the whole year up until we ship it to them, because we'll give them updates and show them pictures of how the production's going and samples, which also keeps them involved in the process.
No, that's fantastic. So to make sure people know, head over to Kickstarter. The game is Forsaken, Forsaken, just to make sure people know. This game funded in 3 hours, under 3 hours. I think you're being a little generous when you said, you're being, keeping it close. But yes, this game funded in 3 hours. It continues to just roll up and up. And while some games, they peak after the first day or two, this game continues to accelerate. And I think, again, that speaks to the excitement that's been generated within the hobby, not just from people outside looking at it, but people within the hobby talking about it, getting excited. Noah, we wish you the best. We know that you're going to come back, and once this game is funded, you know what, Mark, let's do this.
Oh, the game's funded, by the way. It's already funded.
No. I mean, not once it's funded. I mean, once it closes, once the project ends, and they officially say it's happening, it's funded. But we know it's funded instantly. Sure. But once the Kickstarter is done, and you are more entrenched in the post-Kickstarter activities, we would love to follow up with you and sort of find out how, because again, this is a process that you're going through as a creator for the first time. We'd love to talk to you further down the line and maybe give our audience insight as to how the Kickstarter process works beyond the actual funding of a product, how it goes on throughout the year, and what the trials and tribulations are for you going through this. So maybe we can sort of follow your journey and sort of, let everyone know how the whole process works as we continue. Would you be willing to come back and torture yourself again?
I would definitely do that.
Thank you so much. So Noah Adelman, man behind Game Trayz, Game Trayz Labs. The game is Forsaken. Go to Kickstarter now. Make sure you back the game. Check it out. If it's for you, show the game some love and back it. And if you're anything like me, if you love open world games with exploration and different branching trees of possibilities, I think you're going to love this game. So Noah, thank you for coming, and we can't wait to have you back.
Check out our social media, guys, at YourTechReport, and you will find a link, of course, directly to the Kickstarter. We'll be back in just a moment.
Your Tech Report will be right back.